What is going on, guys, and welcome back to another very exciting video. In this video, we are going to be talking about Google as well as Meta's earnings. They both announced in the last 24 hours, and what we are going to do is we are going to take a look at the detailed reports of what came out with Google and Meta's earnings. We're also going to see how the stock reacted, and then I'm going to give my opinion on where these stocks are headed in the future. So if you enjoy the video, make sure you drop a like down below, and if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you hit that sub button. Let's start off by taking a look at Google's earnings. We can see here today the stock is up almost 6% in a single trading day, and that is a massive move for a company that has a $1.64 trillion market cap. And we can see that after hours they announced their earnings and the stock was trading around $122. However, after the announcement it spiked all the way up to $132. And if we look at year to date for Google, it is having an amazing year. We can see that the stock is up over 45%. And that is from its lows back in January of around $86 to where it's sitting at now for the highs of the year of $130. And we can see that Google still has room to run up before it reaches all-time highs. Back in November of 2021, it hit $150. So there's still $20 of runway before it gets back to that pricing point. So after hours yesterday, they announced two very good beats in terms of EPS and revenue. They announced EPS of $1.44, which was 7.29% above what analysts were expecting. And for revenue, they came in with $74.6 billion in revenue. That is a 2.54% surprise compared to what analysts were expecting. The only somewhat negative thing that I could find in this earnings report has to do with revenue growth. We can see that last year they were experiencing year-over-year growth at 13%. However, this quarter they have only experienced 7% growth year-over-year. However, right now, with the economy the way it is, investors are primarily focused on EPS. And we could see that Google came in 2022 with an EPS number of $1.21. They have grown that number by almost 20% to $1.44 in 2023. Along with EPS growth, net income has increased from $16 billion all the way up to $18.3 billion. Google search is still the primary revenue generator for Google, and we can see that they have sustained some growth there, going from $40.6 billion to $42.6 billion. But the big thing to highlight here is their growth in cloud. Cloud in 2022 was sitting at $6.3 billion and has grown all the way up to $8 billion in 2023. The only other small negative thing that I could find in this earnings report is the number of employees at Google. They are currently sitting at 181, almost 182,000 employees. And this compares to their 2022 number of 174,000 employees. And one thing to keep in mind is they did announce that they were going to be laying off some people in January. And this number actually includes those layoffs. So they have still managed to add around 8,000 people to their headcount. We spoke a little bit earlier about Google Cloud's growth in terms of their revenue, but they have also seen significant growth in terms of their operating income. In 2022, they were operating at a net loss of $590 million. However, in 2023, they have flipped a switch and gotten to a positive operating income of $395 million. They do also have a quick note in here about the employees that they announced they were going to lay off back in January. The total charges for severances as well as other fees came out to $2 billion, and that has already been charged out over the first 6 months of this year, ending June 30th of 2023. And that could be big moving forward because basically with those fees behind them, this will help them bolster their EPS and really look positive moving into the future. With these fees being behind them, as well as the potential of growing their EPS numbers by around 20%, we could start seeing the stock move higher as analysts bring up their EPS estimates for the year. And what that means is their valuation right now could be lower than what you are seeing on Yahoo Finance. And right now it is still sitting relatively low when compared to the market. Google is sitting around a 22.78 forward P ratio. Now let's go ahead and jump into Meta's earnings. We could see that the stock moved up around 1.39% during the day. However, it announced its earnings after hours and the stock has moved up almost 7% on top of that. We could see that during the day it was trading around $300 at the close and then spiked all the way up to around $320 after hours. And similar to Google, Meta came in with a solid beat on EPS as well as revenue. We could see that for EPS, EPS, analysts were expecting around $2.89. However, they reported $2.98, which was a 3.2% surprise. In terms of revenue, we can see that they reported $32 billion. Analysts were expecting around $31 billion, and that equates to around a 3.12% surprise. And here we see a lot of similarities between Google and Meta. So their revenue grew by around 11%, where Google's was around 7%, so a little bit better here for Meta. And we can see that in 2022, they had revenue of $28.8 billion. However, here in 2023, they're at $32 billion. Margin, about the same. In terms of net income, they saw 16% growth from $6.7 billion to $7.8 billion. And then again, for EPS, we saw about 21% growth here, which is very similar to what we saw from Google of around 19%. And they went from $2.46 in 2022 to $2.98 in 2023. And in terms of their active users, they had relatively solid growth. We could see across their family of apps, they had around 7% growth year over year to 3.07 billion users on average. On the monthly active users, they were sitting around 3.8, which is a 6% increase year over year. For Facebook, they also saw an increase of 5% year over year to 2.06 billion active users. And on monthly Facebook users, they saw 3.03 billion users. That has increased around 3% year over year. Here we have a small concern. We are still sitting in a relatively weak ad environment. So they did see their average price per ad decrease by 16% year over year. However, they were able to grow their ad impressions by 34% year over year. And Meta has done a little bit better job of controlling their headcount than Google. They're currently sitting at a headcount of 71,500. That's as of June 30th, 2023. This is a decrease of 14% year over year, and it actually only includes around half of the employees that are expected to be impacted by the 2023 layoffs. The CFO also offered some guidance moving forward. The first comment we have up here is the revenue for the third quarter. They're expecting somewhere between $32 to $34.5 billion in revenue. The second comment I wanted to point out has to do with Reality Labs, or the metaverse. And basically what they are talking about here is that they are expecting the operating loss for this segment of their business to increase year over year in 2023. This is something that investors have kept a keen eye on, is how much Meta is spending on the metaverse. And this could be seen as a negative for investors because the losses are continuing to rise for this segment of their business. I think overall, these losses are going to be overshadowed by the overall positive expectations around revenue and EPS. We could see that for next quarter, analysts were projecting around $28.3 billion in revenue. So if Meta is able to come out with anywhere between $32 to $34 billion, that will be a huge beat compared to analyst expectations. We also saw Meta beat on EPS numbers, and right now analysts are projecting that they will come in around $10.68 for the current year of 2023. However, if Meta continues to beat by this 3% number, we could see that target need to raise up all the way to around $11 in EPS. With this positive EPS growth, we could start seeing Meta's valuation either fall if the stock were to trade sideways, or stay about the same if the stock does trade up with these earnings news. And what we are seeing right now is Meta is trading at a 24.33, which in my opinion is still a relatively decent valuation for Meta. I think it should be trading anywhere around 30 for its forward PE ratio. So overall, keep in mind, I do own both of these companies. I own Google shares and I own Meta shares. I like both of them for the long term. These are two positions that I am very bullish on and that I was adding around 6 months ago as the stocks were bottoming out. So I really like these positions moving forward. I'm not planning on selling any of them either time soon, but I'm also not really adding with the current run up that we've seen in both of these stock prices. I think there's some better deals out there, but that is all my opinion. Keep in mind, do not buy a company just because some random person on YouTube talked about it. Make sure you are doing your own research and looking into companies that meet your risk tolerance as well as your time horizon. So with all of that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you hit that sub button. And as always, guys, have a wonderful rest of your day.